Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? Today I'm interviewing Creative Cat Productions. If you want to introduce yourself, I guess.
All right, I'm John. I'm the owner of the Creative Cat Productions YouTube channel. Yeah,
Oh, I gotta say, I found your channel through your Sega Master System mini video. I really like that video. Like when people think of like the mini consoles, nobody really thinks of older systems like the Sega Master System.
yeah, it's true. The Master Systems, it didn't do very well in the United States. I think that's the main reason. But it's kind of like one of these hidden gem consoles where it's like there's a very small library, but there are very few bad games. And so for people who are getting into retro gaming, I think it was a gold mine because it had a lot of unique games that people had never heard of before. I think maybe 10 years ago I think it and the TurboGrafx 16 could have been like the best place for collectors who were interested in getting away from the NES stuff was to discover I think how great the Master System was. There was so much there.
Oh yeah, the Master System is completely like underrated. I definitely want to
It
get one of them.
is. It is, and
Oh,
that's why I'm super disappointed that they didn't really jump on a mini console for that because I feel like there were a lot of good first party Sega games that people are just not really that aware of that were on the
yeah,
Master System, and they're really worth playing now. I mean, they're not as good as like Super Mario Brothers 3 kind of thing, but there are some games on there that approach that level of polish. A
most
few.
definitely.
Yeah, it was a great console. It just got buried in the storm that was Nintendo.
Right. Now, one thing that I definitely want to talk about with you is I watched your TurboGrafx 16 video,
Yeah.
and I like what you did with like the 1980s Japan. I really like that. No, like that is such like it's a good point, but it's a weird point to bring up at like the same time because I feel like 1980s Japan like that bubble sort of popped, and then the PC
Yes.
Engine came along. I actually like that part of the video.
Yeah, I was looking. We were trying to find an explanation for historically, like people will always talk about how well the PC Engine, it's the Japanese corollary to the TurboGrafx 16, and it's like the PC Engine. The story always goes it did really well. And so it's somehow there's like some kind of disconnect because the PC Engine did well, but something went wrong with America and the TurboGrafx 16 went badly. And I kind of realized that maybe there was an economic side to that story because like it just so happens that the PC Engine launched in the very middle of a very huge financial economic bubble in Japan where like spending money was at an all-time high. Like people were making huge sums of money. I did a lot of research on the Japanese economic bubble, and I mean the stories that I heard were just absolutely outrageous. And some of those little anecdotes I put in the video were true. Like those were true stories about like that people would tell about the economic bubble. I don't know how true it is that housewives were drinking $500 lattes with gold sprinkled in it, but I don't know. I've seen stuff like that before, and so maybe it was possible. But there was a lot of money in Japan, and so to me, it's like maybe it wasn't so much that the PC Engine was great, but that there was just a lot of extra spending money for superfluous things, you know.
Right.
And in the U.S., it's like, uh, it just so happens that by the time the TurboGrafx came out, the bubble crashed. That very year, the bubble crashed.
Yeah.
1990.
Yeah. For based
Yeah.
off the research, it kind of seems like America was sort of like the same way in the 80s. Again, I don't know because I wasn't there at the
Yes.
time, but it seems like America in the 80s was just sort of the same way. Badass cars, music,
Hmm.
all that good
There
stuff.
was if the, I remember the 80s. I was born in 82, and I remember it seemed like it was a period of like kind of sustained prosperity. It felt like all my neighbors, all like there was like this sense in the air like that people were kind of doing well financially. Like it seemed like all the kids I knew at school, that's like everybody was getting Nintendo. And I'm from a poor kind of West Texas. I'm from El Paso, Texas. That's where I was born. And it's like this is not like a very wealthy like community, but it seemed like all the kids are getting like the like nicest stuff in that decade. Like all of a sudden like stuff was pouring in. There was resources pouring in for some reason. I think everybody had it was stonks. I don't know. It's the stonk market. I don't know
Well,
what we're doing.
well, yeah, I would say that's like part of that, but
Yeah.
yeah, just like I don't know, like the 1980s just seemed really cool, at least from my perspective, because like,
They were cool. I think the 80s legitimately were cool from what I remember. I remember it's like my sister had big hair with hairspray. I feel like that we ate a lot of pizza. It was an amazing time. Nobody got fat, and it was weird. It was cool.
yeah, I mean, again, like I wasn't around back then, but like
Yeah.
typically when I think of the 80s, I think of the NES,
Yes.
Scarface, Grand Theft Auto Vice City,
Yeah. Video
just
games were really exciting in the 80s because it's like NES was really popular and it was really it was really ubiquitous, and it was this weird glue that all the kids at school could talk about because like there was nobody whose life wasn't touched by the NES. Even if you were a Sega kid like me, which I was, like you know, the NES was still something that everybody experienced because every kid next door had one. It was like it was like the VCR or the TV. It was like almost like a normal household appliance. So we all knew exactly what we were talking about. If you mentioned Rygar, everybody knew. You talked about like Metroid, everybody knew. It
right.
wasn't it wasn't like now it's like you try to talk about games with people. There's so many, and it's
Yeah,
so vast. It's such a vast, or like there's so many that come out every year. It's like how many games come out in a single year? Must be thousands. Can't keep
yeah,
up with.
it's-
It's part of why I like retro gaming. I like the simplicity of it. I like going back and like I could talk about these games with people. If I were to mention any game from like 2015, I bet neither one of us would know the other. Neither one of us would know what the other one was talking about.
right.
So that it was cool like that. So that was cool.
Yeah. No, no. Another part of the video that I definitely want to talk about is you talking about Japan stuff in America in the 1980s. Now, I never really realized that like a bunch of things were popular in the 1980s like Ninja Turtles, Transformers. All of that was
Yeah.
Japan, and nobody really realized that.
Yeah, there was a lot of crossover between the U.S. and Japan, and I think that I think people at the time kind of did realize it because there in the 80s Japan was doing so well that there was this foreboding sense in the U.S. that somehow Japan was going to take us over. Like, have you ever seen the movie what is it, Blade Runner?
No.
And that Blade Runner is this really classic sci-fi movie from like I think it's from 1983, and it was directed by the guy who did Alien, Ridley Scott. It's really good. It's very cryptic, but it's about like cyborgs and stuff in the future. But in that world, it takes place in a future LA where the U.S. has essentially been bought out by Japan in a corporate takeover. The country of America has been bought out by Japanese corporations, and so there was this sense that as the U.S. car industry was faltering, and as the Japanese tech industry was like booming with cars and cameras and all that stuff, that somehow the nation of Japan was gonna like get like some kind of like the comeback victory, but in the economic form over America. Of course, it didn't happen because of the bubble, but it was like I think people really were intimidated by Japan. Like you see a lot of movies. Like have you ever seen Gung Ho with Michael Keaton?
Nah.
It's another movie that like perfectly encapsulates that anxiety that people had, where it's like when Japanese car companies started like overtaking American, and what do they do with the American auto workers with their new Japanese bosses? And in that movie it's like hilarity ensues, but it's a good movie, but it's I think people were really afraid of Japan and like yet also kind of in awe of them because like they had turned around their like and after the war their country was so devastated that people thought they could never come back, that it was over for them, they were just done. And then in like 30 years they became like the number 2 economic power on earth, and so people were really intimidated by that. And I think also kind of inspired by it. That's why anime took off because I distinctly remember anime being a thing, but where I'm from it was more of a thing earlier because I'm from in Mexico, where El Paso is right on the border with Mexico, and in Mexico like they couldn't afford animation studios, but they wanted like animation for their TV shows. So what they did was they just imported a lot of anime, and then they would play it in Spanish. So I feel like we got like into things like Dragon Ball and like Sailor Moon and stuff like a full 10 years before it hit the United States. before Cartoon Network and all that, it was like Mexican TV was like playing tons of anime, and then Robotech was huge, and I think people were aware that that was Japanese. I don't think people knew Transformers was Japanese, but it was like there was already so much cultural exchange happening, you know, that it's easy to forget it, but it was already pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the Japanese brands. Like for some reason, I've been looking into getting a CRT TV, but like, it seems like most of the Japanese brands are good. You know, like Sony Trinitron and other things like that. But you don't really hear about Zenith CRT TVs and stuff like that. Like, it seems like when the Japanese started taking over things, you know, technology-wise with cars, games, stuff like that.
Yeah,
like they had like a higher quality compared to
their consumer electronics are really durable. Like I remember being in awe of the fact that my Sega Genesis and my Nintendo 64 worked like 20 years later, and it's like no transistors had to be replaced, nothing. It was like, and it's like I can't say that for any of my American-made electronics. Like try and get an Atari 5600 to work, it's like impossible. Those things died like 30 years ago. Try finding a working controller for an Atari 5600. I think that's literally impossible. It's like they all have to be repaired.
Yeah, same thing with the OG Xbox. Shit, mine is at a retro repair place. I've been waiting to get it back for months.
Yeah, that's something I lamented CD technology for that reason, because I feel like the cartridge-based stuff was so durable, and then as soon as PlayStation came out, and if you scratched a disc, it was just a nightmare. It was the end. It was the end of your game. And then all you had to do is drop it somewhere. It was over.
I got two PS1s. I have the slim PS1 and the fat PS1. My fat PS1 could barely ever read discs. My slim PS1 could. My slim PS1 is actually really good compared to the fat.
Very cool.
Yeah. Now another thing that I wanted to talk about. You made me like rethink Super Mario 3D All Stars, because I was in the band, you know, all this goes bad, it's shitty, it's blah blah blah. But I actually like your perspective on it. Like the reason why you bought those games is so like your kids could experience it. I never really thought about it. I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah, it was a great, convenient way for them to play it for the first time. And so to me, because I didn't read any of the bad press until we were making the video, so I was really surprised that people were really bummed about it. And then I realized like, oh, okay, people don't like this. And then so I thought, well, we have to make a video about it, and it turned out like we liked it, because I'm like, this was actually for us, for the price, given our circumstances, given that we never really owned a copy of that game in any that was accessible to us. It was great, you know. We played it. We beat Super Mario 64. We played a little bit of and Mario Galaxy was really good. I'd never gotten to play Mario Galaxy before, and I think that game alone was worth the price of admission. For being someone that's never played it before, you know, I didn't know how good that game was.
Alright, well, me personally, I can't get into Mario Galaxy because of the motion controls, but
yeah.
The only reason why I bought it is because I didn't have a copy of Mario Sunshine yet. I had, of course, now I have all three of the games. I have the N64 cartridge, the GameCube game, and the Wii game.
Yeah.
The only reason why I bought it is because I didn't have a copy of Mario Sunshine, and now that I have a copy, I barely touch 3D All Stars.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
Yeah,
that makes sense. To play it on the original stuff is better.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Now I know you talked about the TurboGrafx 16. What do you think about the Turbo Express?
Turbo Express was really cool. I've actually seen one of those once when I was a kid in the wild. You can't really see the screen very well, but at the time it was like earth-shattering, because it was the first color handheld that anyone had ever seen. It came out like I'm gonna say like 2 years before the Game Gear, and before what was the Atari had one, what's the name of Atari's handheld?
The Lynx.
The Lynx, yeah. It came out like so much earlier than those, and it was really impressive. But it, you know, like a lot of those early LCD screens, like they suffered from really wicked motion blur, and so same was true with that. I thought it was a great idea. I mean, it was cool. I mean, it was ahead of its time. It was very expensive from what I remember. I want to guess it was $300 or something like that.
But yeah, but to the TurboGrafx CD, that's somewhat cheap.
In
the day, but
yeah. I mean, it's a great concept. Sega copied it. I mean, with the Nomad, you know, But I can't recall the battery life on that thing, but I'm sure it sucked. because of the bright backlit screen for all those colors, you know. But it was neat to see, you know.
Yeah, most definitely.
Felt like the future because like there weren't a lot of in the late 80s there weren't a lot of handheld electronics. I mean, like this is like before cell phones, so it's like the idea that you could play like a video game with that kind of like graphical, like, you know, 16-bit graphics in 89 was, or 90, was pretty earth-shattering. It felt like the future had finally arrived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now another video that I want to talk about is your House of the Dead and Resident Evil video.
Oh yeah.
Dude, I never fucking thought about that. Like,
Yeah.
like the two stories are just so similar.
Yeah. With that one, we just wanted to do a House of the Dead video. And then for whatever reason, I was watching a long play of Resident Evil, and we realized that the storyline was absolutely identical, and I couldn't believe it. And so we started researching like everything we could to find like what are the parallels between, and like what could be the possible source of the parallels. But when we went through both games, like the similarities were just unreal. So it went from a video about House of the Dead to be a video about how much Resident Evil was exactly like House of the Dead, and how crazy it was because they were developed at the same time. Everything about it was baffling, and to this day it's baffling. I have the best explanation is that those guys all just read the same comic books and stuff, you know. And it's somehow like, you know, I don't know, it's like when you're thinking up we like to think that we come up with creative ideas like in some kind of like vacuum where it's just us and like, I don't know, with the universe. But I think if we're from the same culture and we hang out in the same places, we're probably going to come to the same conclusions about the same thing. Yeah. I feel like if you took like a bunch of kids from like Boston in 1972, they're all gonna like write the same short story, you know, if they're from the same neighborhood or something. I don't know. It's a guess.
Yeah, most definitely. I can understand. Also, like, hey, you just want to dip on like the zombie history. You know, you just went way deep into it. I like that.
Yeah, thank you. That was that we were just trying to explore like possible origin sources for this stuff, and it was fun to kind of like go through all these movies. We spent like, we knew we wanted to do a Halloween video, and so we spent basically all of the summer like watching like all these horror movies and like we were Halloweened out. You know, I had like gone and we started reading Ghost in the Shell. I read Ghost in the Shell. It got a little bit too much for the kids. Like, I think more like boring than grotesque. But like, I went through all this media trying to figure out like, where did this come from? There has to be some like Japanese movie or some comic book, something that like this story is like taken from, because it was, and then it just, I think at the end of the day I realized it probably just came from all this stuff. But yeah, we had to like figure out about all of the zombie stuff to figure out where all of it was coming from.
Right. Now, speaking of zombies, have you ever played the Left 4 Dead games?
I've never played those, no. I've heard of them though.
Actually, really cool. It's sort of, well, it's not really similar to Resident Evil and House of the Dead, but it's like a zombie survivor game where you play as a group and you shoot off zombies and you try to get to the next chapter of the story.
Sounds cool. Zombie stuff is cool.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes at night when I'm in my trying to go to sleep, I'll think about like survival tips or survival scenarios for surviving a zombie apocalypse. That sounds like too much to admit, but it's true. You know, like what kind of fortifications would we need? What kind of ammunition? How much gasoline do you need on reserve?
Nah, I used to think the same way when I used to watch the Walking Dead.
Walking Dead, yeah. It's like you kind of want to put yourself in their circumstances, and you think, well, how could I do this? What would I have done better? Yeah. Depends on what kind of zombies you're dealing with, though, because like those like, you know, those, are you dealing with the fast zombies or the slow zombies? Are they contagious? Can you headshot them? It's all those things matter, I guess.
Yeah, and then you got to take into consideration zombie animals, zombie
fish,
stuff
I
like
forgot
that.
about that. Yeah, it's a whole zombie universe.
All right, now I want to talk a little bit about Nintendo Switch Online. Now, you actually, you know, bought and stuff like that. And
yes, we're actually doing a huge video about that right now. My son's editing it. My 9-year-old son's editing it, so it's been going slow. Cool. But yeah, we actually reviewed every Genesis game on the Nintendo Switch Online in this like 40-minute video that's pending. But I know a lot of people are bummed about Nintendo Switch Online, but we kind of defend it, saying like, hey, if you have no access to these games, this, you know, it's not so bad. You know, I kind of see it from, I don't know, I'm okay with it. I wasn't as bummed about the Nintendo 64 stuff. I was really bummed about the Ocarina of Time graphical issues with the water reflection and the where was it, the water temple? Do you recall that?
Mm-hmm.
That was really bad, but they fixed that. So to their credit, someone did notice that. I played through all of Paper Mario, and which is like my first time ever playing that game, which is it's become one of my 10 favorite games of all time because of that. And I had no problems. So I haven't experienced any of the hardships that people have described. Like, I know that there's some bugs out there, and I know that some people have had trouble with input delays and stuff like that. And I think a lot of that might have to do with your TV setup. And I think mine is extremely simple. So I figure that maybe that could be the reason why I never experienced those issues. Like, I just use I have the simplest setup you could possibly imagine. It's like, and a TV about the size of, like, you know, a normal TV. I don't have like one of those giant plasma screen Well, I don't have one of those giant super flat screens. It's like, I think our TV's like 19 inches. So it's not exactly like, you know, I think I got it for $50 at Best Buy.
Well, two things I want to talk about. When it comes to Nintendo Switch Online, I wouldn't say I'm like necessarily bummed about it. I mean, the price, that's debatable. It all depends on each, you know, single person. But to me, it doesn't really matter because I have like most of the library on the legit N64, so I don't really.
Yeah. Yeah, there would be no advantage there. That's for sure. Because it is better. Because just the not having the controller, I think that is huge. One thing I'm very excited about was those Nintendo 64 controller replicas. I still can't get them. I check, like, I used to check. Yeah, I used to check like every day. I've given up, but no, you still, as far as I know, you still can't buy them. You can buy the Genesis ones for like way too much money, but you can't get those. The scalpers buy them up as soon as they go online, and they're just all on eBay for like $200, like instantly.
Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's terrible. The scalpers buy them all. I don't know how they must have bot accounts or something, because they buy it like within seconds. They're all gone. It's incredible. It's like, and there's a lot of those games. I'll say this, even Paper Mario, I can see how if you're used to playing that game on an N64 controller, it's just not quite the same. It's like the layout is not optimal. For Zelda, the layout is definitely not optimal.
Yeah, you know what? I gotta be honest. I had Ocarina of Time for the N64, but I don't like the way Zelda controls on the N64. But recently I just bought the promo disc for the GameCube that comes with like all 4 games.
Yeah, that was supposedly that was this the disc drive. What is it? The Nintendo 64 disc drive version of the game, but I don't think so. I think that there was a better game in mind, but I don't know. That's what Miyamoto said at one time. Supposedly the Master Sword, or what is it, the Master Quest version of that game that came on the GameCube, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was supposed to be on that disc drive. I don't know. Yeah, the whole game was originally developed for the N64 disc drive, and it had to be scrapped and redeveloped for the regular N64 when they realized that nobody was buying the disc drive.
Yeah,
it's the same thing that happened with the original Zelda.
Yeah. Now, one other thing that I want to talk about is it's weird. A lot of people think of the N64 as this, you know, big nostalgic thing. You know, oh yeah, I remember 1996 with Mario 64 and all that. With you have a different like perspective on it. Like the N64 came out when you said you were like what, 15 or whatever.
Yeah, I was already like a freshman in high school. So for me, it was like it was a different outlook from a lot of people that are nostalgic for it. I wouldn't even say I'm nostalgic for it. I kind of just remember it like it was yesterday.
I mean,
I bought it with wrestling games. I swear that's the only reason I got it. I had no real interest in N64 games because I think there was this impression at the time, especially that it was the console for little kids. It had this big, like the big chunky controller, and everything was like Banjo-Kazooie, and Mario 64 looked kind of like for with its art style and its bright color palette, and everything that was like for older adolescents and adults was definitely the PlayStation. And,
Oh yeah, I
and
mean,
it was like, but I think at the end of the day, when looking back, like I way prefer the N64. Like I had so much fun. We had so much fun with that. Like we would bring it down into the wrestling locker room in high school, and we would have like GoldenEye tournaments. It was awesome.
well, I could like again. I was around for this, but I was like 2 or 3 years old when this was around. Yeah, I was born in '97, so I barely even got to experience those consoles,
Yeah,
but it feels like the PlayStation 1 was like advertised as this thing for like teenagers and adults.
totally.
With both Nintendo, it was like the polar, opposite. I mean, with the PS1, we had GTA, Resident Evil, a bunch of stuff, and more, I guess, sophisticated games like Final Fantasy VII and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But with Nintendo 64, they kept it simple, but it was so good. I mean, for the time, I would either choose the PS1 or the Dreamcast. If I was around back then, I could actually pick out one of the consoles. But
Yeah. Yeah, my favorite console from the late '90s definitely the Dreamcast, but like the N64, I really love it, and I definitely put it above the PlayStation in terms of like the games that like that I have the fondest memories of. Like I also love that it was 4-player out of the box and stuff like that. It was really good.
oh yeah,
It was expensive though. Like the cartridges
Really?
they were like $70, like
Damn.
$80 sometimes. Yeah, they were really costly. The console was like, I remember I bought it like for $150, and at the time that was considered really cheap, and it still obviously is really cheap for a console. But yeah, I think that they were undercutting the price, and then the cartridges were outrageous. I think Mario 64 was probably $60, and then like some of my wrestling games, like I got WCW NWO Revenge, and I'm pretty sure I paid $80 for that. It was crazy.
Yeah, jeez.
Yeah, they were really expensive. And the PlayStation, by comparison, I think games are like $40,
Yeah,
except for the RPGs.
I mean, I will say this: comparing the two consoles overall, like the Nintendo 64 may have a smaller library, but I feel like for a smaller library, you get a bunch of
Yeah, there are very few bad games. Where it's like the PlayStation has this huge library, but there are plenty of bad games. Like there's a lot of variety too. I feel like the N64, like in terms of quality, it won the '90s in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
I definitely like the Saturn. Sega Saturn was just like that was disappointing to me. I wasn't really into it. Like it didn't have enough Sega games. It was weird. It was like everything was experimental. Like they did do a few of the arcade stuff. Like they had a good version of Daytona, and they had like some good light gun games, but like they were missing. They had no Sonic. They had no Shinobi. They had no Phantasy Star. They did get Shining Force, but like way too late to matter. It was like one of the last games I think that was released for that. It was really like if you were into Sega, it was kind of like, where's the Sega?
Right.
It was disappointing in that respect. And so but whereas like Nintendo, like they were always like they were both innovative, and they were like carrying forward the stuff that made them successful in the first place. I feel like Sega was always trying to innovate, and they kind of forgot that like they had a fan base that they needed to cater to. Whereas like Nintendo was like they were putting new spins on like old things and like making cool stuff like Smash Brothers, that completely rocked everyone's world. Even back then, the original Smash Brothers was like a big deal. Everyone was like super excited for that, myself included. I thought it was an awesome idea.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the Sega Saturn, it just, I don't know. Like if I was like, I guess, an adult teenager back then, I wouldn't have gotten the Sega Saturn.
No.
Playing it today, it's good, but if you were to put me back in '97 or '96, I wouldn't have picked it out.
Yeah, especially by then. I think that even by then, like it was really clear that the Saturn was just not
Oh,
the one. The
I think
PlayStation by then was huge.
I think by either 1996, 1997, Sega started working on the Dreamcast.
That's correct. That's correct. And they formally announced it, which was like a horrible decision. Like I think there was the president, was it Bernie, what was his name? Bernie something. The president of Sega of America at that time
Hmm.
made a famous announcement in an interview. I think it was probably at like what is it, E3 or one of those, where he basically stated that the Saturn was not their future, and I think that burned a lot of people who spent $400
Yeah.
on Saturn. They're like, no way, they were done. And then even though
Oh,
the Dreamcast was so good,
yeah. I think he commented on this video, but like I said, the Dreamcast was my first ever system. I
yeah,
would say that's one of my favorite Sega consoles out there. Besides maybe the Master System.
yeah, yeah, the Dreamcast was phenomenal. But at the same time, I myself didn't even participate in it until it was over, because my best friend got one, and I thought he was crazy because like he got one like at launch, but I didn't get one until it was already discontinued in 2001, when after the
Mhm.
news of that it was done, like they liquidated it. And so I went to Toys R Us, I bought it for $50 and just grabbed a bunch of games that were like on discount for like $5. Went on eBay and bought a bunch more. I think I had, by the end of that summer that this happened, I
Mhm.
probably had like 30 to 40 Dreamcast games, and all for probably for like pennies on the dollar. It was like nobody wanted them, even though they're even great games that like are today like collector's items were like basically just abandoned at that time. But I loved it. As soon as I started buying up those games, I was like, that was my last big hurrah as like a true gamer, was the Dreamcast, because like soon after that, when I was done collecting for that, I abandoned all my game consoles and I moved it to Los Angeles.
Mhm.
And then like I met my wife, and then for the longest time I didn't play any video games until I started having kids, and then I started playing them again, which is I was like on this like 13-year hiatus or something like that. But like the Dreamcast was like amazing. It had great everything. It had great shooters. It had great RPGs. It even had like Resident Evil Code Veronica was pretty good.
Oh
It
yeah.
had it had like good beat 'em ups. Good, the fighting games at the time were some of the best ever. The Soul Calibur was amazing. I loved it. It was great.
Yeah.
My
The
Yeah,
um.
it's the 3D Sonic games. Those were even good. And Jet Set Radio. So I know you were talking about Jet Set. I saw your Jet Set Radio video, and I agree that is a phenomenal game. And at the time, it felt like a kind of like almost like a breakthrough in terms of like I know it had that cell shading technique was really
Mhm.
innovative at the time, but it was so fresh. It was like everything the Dreamcast did felt like so brand new. I feel like
Exact.
I feel like on the PlayStation and on the N64, like everyone was just kind of like, okay, they're doing 3D. But when Sega did it, they had really good artists. I feel like it was everything just felt so creative and fun.
Right.
Even the little games like Choo Choo Rocket felt like really just fun and creative and playful and colorful. It was kind of the anti PlayStation 2, because the PlayStation 2, everything that's what I feel like when games started to get, everything's like gray and black now. Like in these games,
Yeah.
like everything looks like Elden Ring except maybe less awesome. But like everything's dark. The sky is always really morbid, and there's always shadows everywhere. Everything looks like Metal Gear. That's what it is.
Right.
Ever since Metal Gear Solid came out and Resident Evil, every game for like the last 20 years is like has a sepia layer, and is like, and it's funny. I always make fun of the fact that people have like the PlayStation 4 or 5, and it has the ability to put like 100 million colors, and yet the only color I ever see is gray, blue, and everything's at night, and it's like,
Right.
where's all the bright colors? This is a video game. Like, make it like Jet Set Radio. That game was awesome.
Exactly. Now, speaking of Jet Set Radio, I want to go back to your Paper Mario video. You
Yeah,
said at the beginning of the video, like, every game from that time just seemed, the same. And
yeah,
Paper Mario kind of switched things up, and I actually kind of agree with that. Like, like they should bring back that like cartoony or cell shaded style.
Yeah,
Because
almost like utilize like kind of traditional animation more, and you see it sometimes, like you see like these kind of like anime inspired games, but I feel like it's underutilized. The only people who seem to use it are indie developers. They seem to really get that like vibrant look, you know.
mhm.
Um, Also, I just kind of feel like the N64 was so good at rendering 2D. I was really impressed by how beautiful Paper Mario looked. Because like one of the things I remember about the N64, probably its biggest downside was that those games did not look good, you know. And it's like I
Yeah,
know
nah.
everybody always talks about like how well you see the PlayStation and N64 generation, they haven't aged well. And it's like actually my recollection is that we all thought they looked like crap even then. We're like, why do the games look so bad? We were all like, these look terrible. I remember like seeing Tomb Raider, and we were really impressed that it was 3D, but we were like, this looks like shit. Like this is terrible. Everything's clipping. You could see like it was funny that she had like polygonal boobs because they were hilarious looking. It looked like we would call them polygons, and we would. I remember my friends and I we would even call like we started calling like women's breasts polygons just because like you could we would talk about polygons. Oh, she got big polygons because of what was also Tifa and Final Fantasy VII. It was like these two giant polygons. They look outrageous. They look so ridiculous. But it's like, and it was crazy to see because just like a year before, it was like Donkey Kong Country and like Chrono Trigger and like Sonic 3. Games looked so polished and amazing, and the level of artistry was so incredible, and the detail was so incredible. And then the next thing you know, we're all playing Crash Bandicoot, and it's like, what happened? It felt like the opposite of progress. It felt like, okay, 3D looks cool, but maybe we should have waited like 10 years. That's how it felt. And I
Yeah.
feel like, yeah,
I
sorry.
was just gonna say, I'll be honest. Like when it came to that generation, I feel like the Sega Saturn was really the only one that still supported
Yeah,
2D games.
yeah, I really think the Saturn missed an opportunity there. Like I've been working on a script for a possible like Sega Saturn video, and it's like one of the big realizations I had was that the original hard drive specs was a 2D console, and I feel like if Sega did two things, if they stayed 2D, like with beautiful 2D sprites work, like the kind that like you would see in like a Marvel versus Capcom game from the same time period, if they had like that really beautiful 2D sprite work, and they emphasized like their classic IPs like Shinobi and Sonic, I think they would have stolen the show. I think they could have actually like stunned everybody because I think it would have turned out that people weren't necessarily hungry for 3D as much as they were for like really good games. And it didn't
Right.
really matter if everything was 3D, it just mattered that it was good. The 3D games like Mario 64 did well not because they were 3D, but because it's a good game, you know? And it's like you could make good 2D games. People still love 2D games. I don't think they were gonna like forsake it just because it was 2D, and I think they were gonna have the best looking games. But they decided to go to the 3D route at the last minute and up the price of their console and everything. It was like a disaster. They threw a second processor in there and like make it 3D. Oh no.
Actually, one thing that I want to talk about that you said before, America versus Japan. It
Mm.
was kind of the same way when it came to developing like the Dreamcast. Apparently, Sega America and Sega Japan had like a huge
Yeah, they
fight.
had a contest where they actually like the Sega of America's development, their research and development actually competed with Japan's research and development. And I think in the U.S. it was called Project Black Belt, and I think in
Hmm.
Japan it was called Project Katana. I
Yeah.
want to, and they wanted to see like who's was going to produce the better hardware. But I think the chips were stacked in favor of Sega. I heard this great story, and I don't know how true it is, but it's a great. If it's, I have to verify this, but turns out that Hayao Nakayama, the guy who owned Sega, the parent company of Sega, CES,
Hmm.
I heard that he had stock in in the company that made the chip for the Dreamcast, and that he arbitrarily made sure that company won that contest because for no other reason than he knew for him it was going to be a huge payday if they were to do a huge run on that chipset. So it made him richer because of how much stock he owned in that microprocessors company. because they were going to get the huge contract from Sega. So it was all kind of like inside baseball, and it was all stacked in his favor. Like it was really just a way for him to like, the reason they went with that processor had less to do with performance and quality and more to do with like, you know, his ability to like kind of pilfer his like inside perspective on that. It was interesting.
Yeah,
but I don't know. Dreamcast is great, so I don't know what the problem is.
Yeah. Now, just sort of wrapping things up here. How do you structure your videos? Because I honestly liked your Resident Evil and House of the Dead video and your TurboGrafx 16 video, because you start off with one topic, then you go into another, like with, you know, comparing Resident Evil and House of the Dead, then you go into the history of zombies. Well,
yeah.
TurboGrafx 16, you talk about the 1980s. Like how do you structure stuff like that?
That just, I let that just kind of happen naturally. The way we make all of the videos is that generally my daughter and I will do like a ton of research, and we'll just like we'll pick a topic, and then we'll like, oh, what topic are we interested in, and then we'll read like every article that we can, watch every video we can, and then we'll try and see, is there anything interesting about this topic that we can say that hasn't been said before, or can be said in a new way that's either funny or interesting. And sometimes that doesn't happen, but sometimes when it does, we feel like when we do the writing, and I do the bulk of the writing, it's sort of like those kind of segues, or those kind, I don't know what to say, like those kind of like departures from like the main thread just kind of happen naturally. I feel like sometimes it helps to just kind of give, I want clarity to be like at the forefront of like of the video. So I want people to kind of come away with an idea of like why I think Resident Evil is exactly like House of the Dead, or I want them to see like to understand my point about like shared culture very clearly. So I think it helps to kind of explore like the history of zombies, or it helps to kind of explore like a little bit about the what contemporary Japan is like, to kind of help put all the necessary pieces next to each other, so what the intuition I'm trying to get out of people like is more concrete. You know, it's to kind of make the video, I don't know, kind of feel like you can at the end of it understand exactly what I'm saying, because a lot of people thought I was crazy when I said that. Like I posted that on Reddit and everybody hated me, but then people who watched it, I think they agreed that that I was right, but no one wanted to concede it until they'd seen the video. Everybody was like, "There's no way those things have anything to do with each other." And I'm like, "Well, have you compared them? It's insane." You know?
Yeah, gotcha. Now, just a few more questions. What YouTubers have inspired you?
Oh my! We love YouTube in our family. We watch more YouTube than we watch like anything else. So it's like, I think for me, I really love for when it comes to retro gaming stuff. Like I'm a big fan of GameSack, and you know them, Joe and Dave. Well, Joe.
Yep.
And a big fan of course, I'm a big fan of the Angry Video Game Nerd, especially the classic stuff. If you ever seen our Angry Video Game Nerd video, that's probably one of our best ones.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
We did like a retrospective of it. There's who do I watch now? I watch a lot of people. Man. It's I basically just watch whatever comes up in my recommendations, to be honest. I watch a lot while I'm cooking. I cook dinner for my family because we have a baby right now, and it's like I try to help my wife with that. But I put on my earbuds, and I do a lot of listening to videos more than I do watching, which is kind of how I've started to format videos more for our channel, more around less around the visuals and more around the audio, like the audio narrative, because of that. Because I feel like maybe a lot of other people, like I've heard people like listen to our videos in the car and stuff on the way to work, which I thought was pretty funny and cool at the same time. But yeah, I guess it's hard to say. There's too many people. But I think that the GameSack and Angry Video Game Nerd come like straight to the forefront of like the ones who are most inspirational to me.
Gotcha. I'd say a few of mine are Pan Pizza and Nitro Red.
Metro Red, yeah, cool,
Yeah, those two inspired me a lot.
very cool.
Now,
Who-
what do you? Oh, go ahead.
So I was gonna, what are your favorite channels right now? Oh, like those two, or
I would say at the moment, I would say yours. Uh, Honestly, I'm kind of struggling with this right now.
there's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who I watch. I would say, I don't know, Metal Jesus,
Oh
uh,
yeah,
uh, Gaming Off the Grid, like, oh, Sega Lord X.
oh yeah.
There's just a lot of people.
Do you ever watch Donkey?
Yeah.
My kids love Donkey. Like they think he's like the greatest YouTuber of all time. And they every video we do, they compare it to Donkey. Is it as good as a Donkey video? That's I like Donkey too, but like
Yeah.
they love Donkey. They think he's the funniest thing that's ever existed.
Well, just two more questions. What's your opinion on the current like retro gaming market? Like
Oh man, with all the speculation and all the like non playable games and boxes and stuff.
yeah,
It's kind of a bummer, you know. I feel like it's not really a retro gaming market anymore as much as like it's almost like
same.
people who collect art. It's like they're not really collecting art because they love art. It's just kind of like people who are investing,
Yeah,
and they've kind of ruined it because like even the Evercade, which is something I'm currently working on a video about, and it's like even the Evercade is kind of currently being hit by the scalpers and the collectors who are going in for no not with the intention of purchasing or playing these things, but just buying them and then reselling them or holding on to them. It's like the Beanie Baby thing, you know, where it's
Mhm.
like all these dudes buying up all this stuff that really should be in the hands of people that want to enjoy them. But
Exactly.
it's a real bummer. I feel like at the same time that if there's hope for the future, I kind of feel like indie gamers, or not indie gamers, but indie developers are this thing that I really look to kind of bring back like the style of gameplay that I really like from retro games and kind of like make new stuff that's accessible to people because like they're when it comes to playing classic games, I feel like there's a lot of good, at least in terms of emulation, there's a lot of good options that
Mhm.
people can have. So it's not like the games are lost for all time,
Oh
but
yeah.
certainly when it comes to owning like real hardware, it is. But I feel like from a preservation standpoint, I feel like things are pretty secure with so many people. Not for some things, like I don't know what's going to happen to the Dreamcast. You know, nobody really talks about it, or not the Dreamcast. Well, the Dreamcast and the Master System both are two things that people don't really appreciate much, and I feel like are kind of like getting washed out of the culture a bit.
Well,
Um,
I I will say this. I could definitely agree with you. Like it seems like the passion isn't really there anymore. Like I just told you, I just bought the Zelda collection for GameCube. Take a
mhm.
guess on how much I paid for that.
um, $200,
90.
90.
And
That's pretty.
that's
Still like a
still
lot
way
though.
too much.
Still way too much. Yeah, I've
Like
seen the prices. They just keep going up and up. I remember when it like you could get a game like Musha, and it was a big deal that it was like $100. Like that's crazy. And I saw it recently for like 1,500.
yeah, and well, watching you read on Paper Mario, it makes me want to get the game, but to get that game at least loose is like $80, and that's
Yeah.
it's steep. It's so somewhat reasonable. It's climbing up there.
Yeah, it's gonna push real gamers, like people who want to just play these games for the sake of playing them. It's pushing them straight out, you know. And you're not gonna be able to play these games. Even like TurboGrafx 16 and Master System games
Oh
used to be.
yeah, I
They're
don't even want to touch TurboGrafx 16. Getting the real thing,
yeah, forget
yeah,
it.
that's gonna be a lot.
I think in like maybe 10 years ago, it was like the best console to collect for because a lot of people weren't nostalgic for it and hadn't heard of it, and so it was like you could play great games, and they tended to work pretty well. They for maybe like $5, $10, $15, like loose copies of games, and now it's virtually impossible. That's why
Yeah,
the TurboGrafx Mini was so awesome, but you can't even get that anymore because it's only scalpers own it now.
yeah, that shit's just crazy. I mean, I'm into this for purely nostalgic purposes.
Hmm.
I like like I told you, I didn't grow up with the N64, but just hearing everybody talk about Mario 64, this and that, I
Hmm.
thought I want to experience the real thing. And luckily, I got it while I was still cheap. I think I paid $50 for my N64. I got a copy of Mario 64 and Zelda Ocarina of Time altogether. That must have cost me like $60 at the time.
That's
Now,
awesome.
now to get the N64 alone is $100
Yeah,
bucks.
forget it. No way, I wouldn't do it. You know.
Yeah, I'd say I got in right before it was too late.
Yeah, I feel like N64 was a recent one, and now GameCube. I feel like in the last couple years, GameCube blew up with
Yeah,
collectors. Are they coming for PlayStation 2? All that?
but well, I would say it's most likely the GameCube. I mean, I'm lucky. I've gotten lucky a few times. I got a copy of Mario Kart Double Dash for I think $50. Now it goes for about 80. Like I still have my childhood GameCube games, and don't get me wrong, I'm happy for that.
Yeah,
It's just
totally.
to get the ones that I really want to play is just going to be a lot like Chibi Robo. That is a very interesting game that I want to play one day, but for $200,
Yeah,
forget about it.
yeah, forget it. Emulation is the only way at this point, and it
Yeah,
sucks. Emulation on the N64 kind of sucks.
eh, it's hit or miss.
Cool.
But yeah, I'm sorry to end it on a sour note, but I'm happy you made it here, man. I'm happy to have you on.
Oh, thank you very much. It was good meeting you, and it was great talking to you.
Yeah, no
Uh,
problem.
Thank you very much for thinking about us to include us on your podcast. Really appreciate it.
No problem, guys. If you want to go check out Creative Cat Productions, link will be in the description. Do you want to say anything else?
No, just thank you very much for watching, and we really appreciate it. My kids appreciate it. I didn't get to say it in the recording, but they make these videos with me, and so it's been a really like fun way for our family to like learn creative skills together and to kind of just spend time together. It's been a fun activity, in toward that end, and so. We're just glad that people are watching, and more and more people keep watching. We've had our biggest growth ever in the last several months, so it's like we're very optimistic, and we're just going to keep trying to make funny and informative videos about old games.
Yeah,
Thank
man.
you.
Looking forward to it.
For
Yeah,
sure.
everybody, if you want to, go check out Creative Cat Productions, and yeah, if you want to, like, subscribe, do whatever you want to do, Narsha, and tell me down below what's some of your favorite Creative Cat Productions videos. And yeah, I guess we'll see you guys later. Peace.